Okay, hello, welcome to Verbling. I'm teacher Oakley, and this week at this particular time slot, we are going to be, for the next 4 days, anyway, we're going to be looking at the TOEFL listening exam. Okay. We are going to start out today with a basic overview of the entire of the listening section. However, this is an overview. I'm going to try to just explain the format, question types, a little bit about the scoring, what have you, and some very general strategies. Frankly, the listening exam, more than any other, involves just practice. So today's class will serve I'm just going to point you in the direction, more or less. And hopefully you can find opportunities to practice online or otherwise. Since this is an overview, I welcome any and all questions, whether it's related specifically to TOEFL listening or anything about the TOEFL exam at large. Really don't be shy about interrupting me or asking me questions today. I tend to get on a roll and I tend to keep going and get excited about explaining information, so don't be shy, okay? About stopping me and asking a question, anything whatsoever. I don't really care. You want to talk about comparing IELTS to TOEFL to CAE, whatever you have questions about, I'm open to and for. Okay, hello Giovanni, good to see you back in the TOEFL class. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you. And you, teacher?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right, thank you. It's Monday, but you know, Mondays happen to all of us.
I know.
I'll survive.
8 o'clock in the morning and I'm at work, so...
Oh, at work already? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, also I'd like to welcome Anton. Hello, Anton. How are you? Hi.
I'm okay.
Welcome to the class. Anton, do you have plans to take a TOEFL exam, or just checking?
Yeah, in the summer, in a couple of months.
In a couple of months, okay. Very good. Okay. Again, any questions you have, whatever, anytime. Welcome to the class, and hello, Cornell.
Hi, Oakley. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you. I am waiting for the next Monday because I will start my new at my new workplaces. New workplace.
Oh, okay. So you've got a new position?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Congratulations.
Thanks so much.
All right. Hope it works out a little better for you.
Yeah, I hope so.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, gentlemen. Let's get started talking about the TOEFL exam. All right. Let's talk about the basics, what you can expect. Of course, the TOEFL exam, by and large, nowadays is the IBT version. It's a computerized exam. So for the listening section, of course, you'll have a headset and microphone. When you start out, it will, in fact, very simply guide you through testing. You test the volume level of the headset, of the speakers in the headset, and the speaking volume of your microphone. So you're very, very simple instructions to guide you through all that. Okay. And then the exam will start. What does the exam consist of? It will consist of, it's going to take an hour. It's going to consist of a mix of lectures on academic topics from a teacher or professor, what have you. Basically, like university lectures. These lectures will take 3 to 5 minutes. Often one speaker, just the lecturer, but sometimes he's interrupted with he or she may be interrupted with questions. It's possible you could have a lecture with a couple of speakers. Okay. Okay, you're gonna hear maybe 4 or 5 of these lectures. Again, 3 to 5 minutes long. Then there will be a series of questions after the lecture, about 6 questions. Intermixed with the lectures, okay, you will hear conversations. Usually a conversation with 2 people, but there could be another speaker, possibly. Again, 3 or 4 minutes long, 12 to 25 exchanges back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And again, followed by 5 or 6 questions, which you will have to answer. Basically speaking, that's it. We'll get into more detail in a little bit. Unlike the reading, the TOEFL reading, which we looked at last week, if you remember, the TOEFL reading, there's a very easy click on button, and you can go back in reading and look at what questions you did not answer, and you can go back and try them again. It's actually a decent strategy to use. Do the easier questions first, because you're really fighting the clock, and then you can go back. Listening, it's not an option, unfortunately. You are not allowed to skip questions and return to them later. You must answer each question before you can proceed to the next question. Some of the questions you'll hear, and you'll be able to read the question and possible answers, of course. A few questions you will only hear. You will not be able to read them. So listen carefully, even after the main section that you're listening to. Some of the questions will be spoken. Sometimes they will repeat part of particularly lectures. They do that. They'll repeat it again for you and then ask a question about it. Give you a second bite at the apple. So there's a variety of things that go on when you're actually taking the test. Okay, quick shout out and welcome to Alexander. Hello, Alexander. Welcome to the class.
Hi, thank you.
Hi. Okay, before we get to some basic strategy, any questions about the format? No? Pretty straightforward. Okay. All right. Basic, super basic strategy, and maybe pretty obvious to all of you, but I've seen a number of students make this mistake. Very simple. First, I've had students before who are, of course, they're nervous and concerned. They need a certain score, so they stay up the night before and cram for the test. They stay up late studying. This is not a good idea at all, most especially concerning the listening part of the exam. You really need focus. So, my advice, basic strategy number 1, get plenty of sleep the night before. You will need it. It is impossible to take the listening test if you're really tired. And heaven help you if you're sick, if you're feeling under the weather. Get plenty of rest. Eat a big breakfast. Your brain needs food. All right. Your brain needs energy, because you really need to use every bit of focus that you have. You lose your focus, you space out for 10 seconds, and you're behind. You don't know where you are, and you're playing catch up. That segues right into my second major strategy, and that is you don't want to be thinking behind. Just as in the reading exam, you're trying to always predict what's going to happen next, what you're going to read next, much more important in the listening section. And this not only for TOEFL, for, it doesn't matter, CAE, IELTS, whatever. Any standardized English listening test. It's all about thinking forward, only thinking about the future. You're really going to mess yourself up if you try to think about what just happened. If you're thinking about the past, oh, it's going to be painful for you. If you miss something, forget it. Again, frequently they sometimes repeat some information you may need, or even the question itself, it may repeat a section of the listening for you. So all is not lost if you miss something. Don't panic and try to work out what he said 10 seconds ago, because then you're going to miss whatever comes next. It's pointless. Always forward. What's going on now? Trying to think about what's probably coming. What's probably coming. That's the direction your brain has to be working. Trying to play catch up, or yeah, it just won't work. Okay. Don't try to do too much. Okay, you can make notes. All right, let's talk about that. If you choose to make notes, quite obviously, now some of these things are going to be obvious for everyone, but obviously you do not have time to write down complete sentences. You do not have time to probably pick up every single detail. It's going to be impossible to do that, and if you're busy making notes, then you're not really doing active listening. So, if you do make notes, and I do think you should, your notes should be basically like one-word keywords, or sometimes co-located 2 words, you know, that have a specific meaning, co-locations. Now, when I'm making notes, basically it's like this. The questions, okay, in a general way, the questions are not going to be about really detailed, specific information. If they ask for, maybe they may ask you why the speaker, maybe the lecturer, why does the lecturer use the word endangered? I don't know, just as an example. It's going to be because the entire lecture is about endangered species, or he's using any particular endangered species as a primary example to make his point. It's going to be because it's really important. Okay, when I'm making notes, well, hello, Lynn. Hi, Lynn. Hi there.
Hello, teacher.
Hi, welcome. We're talking about TOEFL listening, okay? And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my strategy for making notes. Now, your strategy, for those of you taking the TOEFL exam or doing any listening exam, IELTS, whatever, you've got to make it your own. I don't know. I draw little arrows to show time. You know, I make the @ symbol like you do in a email address. Arrows, circles, lines mean something in my brain when I'm making notes, because I'm really trying to use a more or less shorthand. Basically, another thing you can practice, by the way, is making notes while really not watching what you're doing, because it actually helps. It's one little practice technique. Helps some people. Make notes without actually watching what you're writing. Now you're listening. You don't need watching a movie or watching TV, but sometimes that can actually help you as well. In any case, what I do, something like this. Basically everything you hear, the lectures, the lectures are going to have at least 2 main points, okay? And by the way, this goes for parts of the speaking test that also involve listening. Actually, 2/3, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions all have listening section. Much of what I'm talking about today is applicable to the speaking test as well. Okay. What I do. Again, you may modify this. You may do it completely differently. I will write M1. Okay. Okay. M1, I'll quickly write down, if I'm making notes, the main focus and maybe the controlling idea. There's going to be a main topic. A main topic. The main topic, who knows? Dinosaurs. Egyptian geometry. It's going to be academic things. You hear here and later read in the reading section. Topics about that have to do with social matters. There's always something about the natural world. There's always something about arts. These types of topics. So I write down the main topic and the focus because this is going to come at the beginning. If it's a conversation, one person is going to talk about a problem they have or some news or whatever. It's going to come in the beginning. So before it even starts, I'll write M1 dash, and then I'll write down the keyword, which is the topic and the focus. Same thing in a lecture. And then basically I organize my notes like this. I write P1.1, maybe it's reason 1 if he's giving reasons. I do things like this. P1, D1, point 1, detail 1. P2, D2. And my notes, frankly, when I'm done and I'm ready, basically my notes may be 5 lines and that's it. Just a couple words, the topic and focus, the first point, 1 detail, the second major point that I catch and 1 detail, and that may be all my notes. I may have maybe 5 to 10 words on my notes. That's it. No phrases, no sentences, just real skeleton outline of what I heard. Because I'm going to be really focusing on listening. Now, what are you listening for? Now, here's the thing. For me, and I think a lot of people, I can turn up my focus a little bit. I can raise it up a notch a little bit. I'm going to do that. One thing you should study, all of you guys, and not just for listening. You really need to study, brush up on, whatever, transitions, which is to say signal words, signal phrases, or transitionals. Well, I'm going to show you some examples in just a little bit here. I'm going to kind of take you through how these things are organized and show you what I mean more specifically in just a minute. But things like the lecturer may introduce a topic and say, however, there's one enormous problem in dealing with this topic. Okay, when you hear a number, there are 3 aspects. There is one main problem. There are a few, whatever. You hear any quantifier, especially in the beginning when they start speaking, really focus, because what they're doing is they're signaling they're about to tell you what their main, what they're talking about. You know, if I hear one important aspect, or the first main point of study, or okay, then I have my main point. When I hear, for example, for instance, an illustration of this, this is my D1, detail. So I super focus on these discourse markers because they're going to use them. Now, and I have to say, brushing up on understanding, really studying and knowing these discourse markers not only do an amazing, really help you a lot in listening. Frankly, they use them in reading, the stuff you read. You need to speak using these in the speaking section of the test to get a higher score. You need to write these in the writing section. This particular aspect of English, I just cannot overemphasize how important this is, because it's not just important here, it's important in all of the 4 areas of the test a lot. I mean, heavily, heavily important. Your organization and delivery, whether that's in writing or speaking, your score is hugely dependent on these things. Knowing and understanding, recognizing them when you read or hear them, and using them when you write or speak. I really can't overestimate it at all. Okay, so all right, that's basically how I make notes. What am I listening for? Okay, first, before I continue, quick shout out to Mustafa. Hello, Mustafa.
Hello, teacher.
How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking.
Okay. Okay. Any questions so far? I'm gonna continue on. No? Anything. About anything. Again, you guys can ask me questions about anything, even if it seems unrelated to what I'm speaking about. Today is an overview, so anything whatsoever to do with the TOEFL test as a whole, or really anything. Don't be shy. Okay, so what am I listening for? I told you, the first thing I'm going to be listening for, the main idea, the topic and the focus, or the controlling idea. I need to get a hold of that. It certainly will be a question, or all questions will be related to that. It's really important. The next thing I'm going to be listening for, which will become apparent near the beginning of whatever, the lecture or the conversation, is the structure. For example, in a conversation, is it one person has a problem and then they're trying to find a solution? Is it some big controversial news? That may be another one. Is it a service interaction? A customer and a librarian and a student, a customer and a, I don't know, a travel agent, whatever, some kind of service-related transaction. So what is the structure? Because once you know it's a service thing, okay, what happens with service engagements? There's a lot of question and answers going on, obviously. So you've got to recognize, again, being predictive, knowing what's going on. If somebody says, I have a big problem, in the beginning of a conversation, you can start to predict, okay, the other person is going to give possible solutions. It makes it easier to predict what's going to happen. And, you know, helps you choose answers because you're going to choose logical answers for that structure. Another thing which you should be able to catch, don't forget about understanding the attitude or the tone. Especially in conversations, maybe they're positive, maybe they're negative, maybe they're neutral. But there could be questions about that, about how people feel about something. One last thing, which people always forget. There is in addition to the actual material you hear, there's a narrator who, well, narrates throughout the whole thing. This narrator, don't forget to listen to him because he is going to drop you clues. He's going to give you keywords you can use. He's going to rephrase like topic and focus for you. Don't ignore the narrator. Always pay attention because he gives a lot of clues. Great words that you can, possible words or synonyms that may come up in answers later. He can use words that you can use later in the speaking part of the test when you're listening and then reacting to what people say. He's also going to be giving you like great words that you can use, synonyms and such. Okay. All right, now I'm going to do a little screen share because I want to show you some very specific things about how to figure out how to listen for all these. Okay, just a second. I'm going to do a little screen share here. Maybe. Okay. All right, now I mentioned to you that you really need to be listening for transitions. Yeah, you do. Let me give you some examples of what you might hear. Come on now. Okay. Okay. First, looking for lectures. All right, finding the main idea or the purpose. Okay. Really, the way the information is presented in listening and reading are quite similar. Just one is written and one is spoken. The speaker will typically introduce his idea at the very beginning of the talk. Things like this. Okay, today I want to talk about, that's pretty obvious. You need to up your focus when you hear any of these things. Today we're going to look at, tonight I wanted to look at, and he's going to give the topic of discussion. I highly recommend you should write the topic down so you don't get lost or don't. Here's a problem that happens. Somebody doesn't write the topic down and then they hear something else that sounds good. It's always going to come after one of these signal phrases. Okay. After he gives the topic, the lecturer will provide a purpose, an explanation, more information. He will state whether maybe he's going to give an example of something. Maybe he's going to argue against something, a theory, or maybe he's going to support a theory. If you're lucky, maybe he's going to explain a chronological order, a time order, or a process, like how to cook an egg. Okay. Basically, then it's really easy to listen for details because you have time indicators. After that, and next, following that, finally, okay, again, transitions. So, in other words, you recognize the topic, you've got to recognize the direction because that will help you recognize the transitions. Is he going to use time transitions? Is he going to use transitions to introduce points? Another point is. Additionally, as well, another important factor is these kinds of statements. So again, it'll help you predict. Okay, in a conversation, right at the beginning, oh, this is another point, actually. Many people, I don't know, whatever they're spacing out or they're not fully focused when the recording starts. Don't make that mistake. Be ready for active listening. The narrator will introduce it. Now you will hear a conversation between two university students about the new wing in the library. Okay, the narrator will say something like that. Wrap your head around, be ready, because sometimes vital information comes right out of the gate. Hey, did you hear about the new library wing? half burnt down by vandals, it may come to you in the first sentence. So be ready. Okay. Okay, if you hear this, what kind of okay, Giovanni, if you hear, "Hi, what can I do for you today?" Well, what are you going to be listening to?
But if I, I think that I need to wait for the the things that the other people will ask.
Of course, then you're going to have your topic, right? Exactly. The person needs something, but okay, if you hear this, you know that this is the intonation and the words themselves. This is going to be a service exchange of some sort. That's the only time in real life anybody says, "How can I help you today?" I don't, see you on the street and say, "Hi, Giovanni, how can I help you today?" Of course not. Okay, so it's a service exchange, and then you'll find out what the focus is. So that your topic is service exchange. I wouldn't bother writing that down, but in seconds they're going to say something like, "Yes, I'm wondering about how to get a library card." It's going to be the next sentence. Will be the focus of the sentence. Okay. All right. There are a limited, not unlimited, a limited number of structures or basic outlines. They're almost templated. There's a limited number of types of conversations and lectures you're going to hear. There's only so many. It's not completely unlimited. So let's talk about what you're really going to hear and the keywords you need to listen for that they use over and over. They always use. Okay, a comparison and contrast lecture. All right. Okay, this is a lecture. You know what's coming when you hear it right in the beginning, the first 2 or 3 sentences probably. Keywords like this: several theories, possible explanations, many different views. Again, whenever you hear any quantifier, many, 3, several, a couple of, you hear any word like that, turn up your brain, turn up your concentration level, because something important is coming next. Right here, there's going to be an answer to a question. Pretty much 9 times out of 10. Okay. Okay, then listen obviously for words we use in comparison and contrast. These are transitions, people. This is exactly what I'm talking about. In contrast, on the other hand, okay, similarly, however, additionally, also, okay, Anton.
Yeah.
Do I have comparison or contrast? What's coming next if I say in contrast? Well, that's obvious. Well,
Contrast.
obviously contrast. How about on the other hand?
Also contrast.
Also contrast. How about similarly?
Similarly, it's compare.
Very good. How about however?
Contrast. Additionally, also compare and also compare.
That's good. All right. See? All right. Anton's well on his way. Great. Again, when you hear this, on the other hand, get ready, because here comes an answer. I mean, I don't know how to put it any more simply. Basically, if you hear that, an answer to one of the questions coming up is going to be spoken. This is what you need to make notes of. Whatever follows this immediately. Now, he may give other details, and it may, most certainly will give other details, but they won't be nearly as important as the information that follows this. Okay. Wait, seriously, okay, if he gives examples, I'd like to give you a really a really good example of this aspect. If he says a whole sentence like that to introduce an example, well, guess what? That's going to be a pretty damn important example. If he just says, for instance, and then gives a little detail, then probably not even going to be on the test. So you've got to kind of, as well as listening for transitions, listen to basically, the longer the transition or the signal phrase, the more important the information. Okay, so you're going to have comparison lectures. You're going to have cause and effect lectures. These are common. Okay, and you may hear things like this. Rhetorical questions. Oh, yeah. When you hear a rhetorical question, why would this happen? Well, one possible reason is, okay, and bang. When you hear a rhetorical question, snap to attention because the next piece of information you hear is going to be very important. They don't do this in reading, but they do that. You will definitely hear this in the listening, and it's most certainly going to be followed with some kind of X causes Y, X results in Y, X produces Y, whatever. Causes, result, produces. Listen for verbs. All right? Rhetorical question, listen for verbs, because this is going to be important information, because you're talking about cause and effect. This is a common, basic type of lecture. Leads, brings, is responsible for. Okay. All right. Cause, results, due to, blamed, attributable, happens. Okay. Not only are you listening for transitions, to some degree, they'll give you that transition or signal phrase first, then the next sentence with the verb. You got to be able to listen for these verbs as well. That's another thing to listen for. Okay. Okay, abstract category with specific examples. Sometimes, okay, now this could be tricky. Be aware that sometimes the lecturer will make a point. He'll give one example with a lot of detail. Sometimes he'll give 3 examples. So this can be a little bit tricky because they do different things here. Sometimes this, like, one example will be used as an illustration of whatever his point is. Okay. Now, the questions are often, if you hear this, you can also anticipate a certain question type. Questions that involve, how does the example prove his point? Basically. It possibly worded different ways, but that's basically it. Okay, so, all right, well, here's some more transitionals. Okay, I think I mentioned some of these earlier. One approach, one theory. The idea is, okay, concept, the basic premise is, okay, whatever word follows, okay, or a couple words, noun, verb, whatever, these are going to be of supreme importance and probably, again, probably an answer. All right, and same thing, again, depending if it's a quick example or if he uses something like to illustrate this. This is illustrated by. Okay, this is really important. Or consider. Okay. One instance of this. Again, I just mentioned this. Basically, the longer the introductory transitional, the more important it will be. Sometimes little listing of examples. For example, ducks, geese, swans, and other waterfowl. Well, that's not going to be very important. All right. Okay, if he just gives a list. Okay, so this is I think this is really often the toughest kind, because you probably have different things his example is going to show. The next kind is actually kind of easy. The next type of lecture, a sequence or a process, a series of steps or stages or time order. All right, the lecturer will use words like process, development, stages, transition. These are pretty easy to follow because they are loaded with transitionals. It's very obvious what the direction is. It's a time order. One thing happens and then the next thing happens, so it's pretty easy to follow. All right, you'll first, second, third, initially, finally, clearly. These are really easy transitions to follow. Okay, let's talk about types of conversations. Only about 3. They, again, very predictable patterns of what you're going to hear. Okay, a problem and a solution. This is very common. You will most certainly hear this not only in the listening section of the test, for sure in the speaking section of the test. You'll have a problem and solution. Okay. First sentence, first student will introduce the problem, usually right away. Occasionally there are distractors. Hi Mark, how have you been? Oh, I've been doing okay, but you know, I've had a few issues lately. Oh really? Things are going great for me. Glad to hear that. For myself, and then he'll say the problem. Okay, maybe they'll talk 3 or 4 exchanges before they get to the problem, but really no more than that. All right, again, synonyms of problem is what you're going to hear. Okay, and I have a problem, and immediately following this is where I'm going to write P1 and write the word. What is the problem? After I hear the other person say, why don't you? Maybe you should. Have you tried? They like that one, by the way. Have you tried? Have you thought of? Solution. Number 1. Yeah, okay, so again, if I'm making notes, I'll write S1. There always, if there's a problem and solution, there's always going to be at least 2 possible solutions. There will never be 3 problems and then a host of solutions. They will never do that to you. Problem solution will be 1 problem, almost always 2 solutions possible with a little detail. A second service encounter, we already looked at how they sort of introduced that. Usually revolving around university life. So, for example, a student talking to a professor, a librarian, an office worker in the university, something of that nature. Okay. Important here, the service professional will explain exactly what the student needs to do to solve the problem, and this is what the questions will be. You'll have 6 questions, and 4 of them will be about exactly what the student needs to do to solve the problem. So pay special attention to what the service professional is telling the student to do. There are often, frequently, steps the student needs to take to do something. These steps will be part of the question. What do you do first? And the order of steps. So if you're making notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, use numbers, A, B, C, D, E, whatever, to indicate the steps. If this is the case, you can rest assured that you will be getting questions about the steps and the steps order. Okay. Again, keywords to listen for: requirement, application, recommendation. Key in on when you hear one of these service encounters and they mention something prohibited or not allowed. There's going to be a question about that. Or if there's several things that are not allowed, there may be the question where you have which 3 things out of the list of 6 are not allowed. So try to catch them all. They will do prohibitions or things not allowed in lists frequently. Okay, another, and basically it's it. The third type of conversation, a significant event. Usually introduced right off the bat. Hey, did you hear about? Did you see? Oh, I've got to let you know about something like that. Some kind of announcement. Whatever, special event has to do with a special event or a social event or a new building, a new rule, frequently a new rule on campus. Again, everything has to do with academia, campus, school, whatever. Okay. All right, you note the event. That might be a question about exactly what the event is, so you should make a note of that. And then the questions are going to be about the speaker's plans or feelings that could have to do with how they feel about the event. All right, keywords focus in on in addition to the transitions above. Participate, plans. Oh, yeah, okay. Open to, oh yeah, if people talk about if they're free or busy. Usually that signals some very important information. Okay, so basically that's it. That's it. I mean, we looked at conversations. There's 3 kinds of conversations, and that's basically it. The problem and solution, significant events, and service encounter. And that's it. They don't do anything else. That's it. And the lectures are comparison and contrast, or using an example to make a point. There's only so many types of things you're going to hear. So, all right. If you get used to listening to a few of them, you can start to help yourself by being predictive. You can easily recognize what it is, and you can start predicting what you're going to hear. You can start predicting the transitions, which announce important information. Okay. Although you're unlikely to be asked a tone question, yeah, they're uncommon, but especially about the in the conversation questions, it is possible. Okay. Okay, here's another important point. Speakers on the TOEFL, speakers and authors in reading often use phrases or words that can have more than one interpretation, but if you understand their intonation, you understand, you probably would understand what they're saying. Okay, if I say, Cornell, God damn it, I'm taking you to court. That's it, I'm suing you. I'm taking you to court. Do you think I want to get lawyers involved, or do I want to play basketball?
Could you please repeat the question?
Oh, come on. If I say, Cornell, I'm taking you to court, do you think I want to sue you, or I want to play basketball on a basketball court? Well, if I say it angrily, it probably means I want to sue you. Okay, so anyway, although there may not be questions about how somebody feels, there will frequently be words that they use which could mean 2 different things. Court, the place where someone is sued, also basketball court, where you play a nice friendly game of basketball. Okay, anyway, that's okay. Oh, be aware. Okay, another intonation thing. The rhetorical questions, as I said, often rhetorical questions. Lecturers use rhetorical questions. Questions they don't really expect an answer to. Frequently, it is to emphasize a point or to introduce a point. Actually. Okay. All right. The speaker may be more objective in his presentation. Okay. Maybe subjective. He's trying to convince people of something, like cause and effect or comparison and contrast. Most likely, these types of lectures, he'll be trying to convince you of something. Or possibly inquisitive. The example type lectures. This will also help you recognize what kind of information you're going to be hearing. All right, the conversations. All right, you got excited people, upset people, or confused or uncertain people. Definitely. This will be. It's much easier to hear this sort of tone when it comes to the lectures. I think most of us can do that. Okay, pay attention to the transitions. Yeah, okay. Here's an example. Something that second language speakers find very confusing. They hear something like this and they get confused. It would sound something like this. First, I want to look at the mechanism by which single-celled organisms reproduce. Actually, let's come back to that in a moment. We need to talk about blah, 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 blah. Okay, although you've heard the transitional first, so okay, here comes important information, and it certainly seems single cell reproduce. Maybe I would write in my notes, but then I hear, actually, let's come back to that in a moment. Guess what? This information will not be on the exam. This will not be an answer. It says it's a distractor. You're not going to have a question about it. No way, no how. Because that's not what the lecture is about. The speaker makes a mistake, and he changes the topic. Okay, if you see something like that, it is totally not important. And frankly, there are many times when I'm making notes, as I'm doing a practice exam, where I hear this backtracking, this kind of, actually, wait a minute, that's not important. And I cross out the notes. I draw a line through the notes. I know if this happens, there's never going to be a question about it. So when somebody says, you know what, never mind, we'll come back to that in a moment. Actually, okay, listen, be careful when they say actually. That's definitely a keyword to focus on. All right, I don't want to get into that now. Okay, they will do that. Here's another one that something else they do that you need to listen for, because they're going to do it to you, and you've got to understand this information is not important. In addition to recognizing the important information, you got to be able to recognize the nonsense, because half of what you hear is nonsense. I don't have to explain that, right? Okay, when somebody okay, also a rhetorical question, but when somebody finishes this question intonation with correct, okay, right, I don't have to explain that, right? You guys are okay with this, correct? We don't need to go into that now, okay? Meaningless. That means not only is the sentence meaningless, there's nothing important behind it. Whatever they just said in front of it is also unimportant. So negation transitions negate what was just ahead of it. Okay, one-celled life forms can form in amazing pressures, such as in the deep ocean floor. But we don't need to get into that right now, okay? Okay, this information about deep on the ocean floor, life forms, guess what? There's not going to be a question about it. They've just gotten rid of it. It is not uncommon to make notes and then cross out your notes because you realize it was a misdirection. Okay. So recognize that they happen. Okay. So there you go. Actively listen. Noting the main purpose, the structure, the tone. You have to attack the question. You don't have a choice. There's no skipping around. It's not actually possible. And you're also going to use process of elimination, POE, using your basic understanding and your notes. Okay, I want to skip forward to something here. Hang on. Where is it? Before we finish the class. Okay. Okay, attacking the question. Okay, I want to talk a little bit, a couple minutes about the types of questions. Main idea questions. Again, they really need you to get the main idea, not necessarily all the details. Okay, pretty straightforward. Basically, summary, summarizing what you heard, and multiple choice. All right, picking it out. Detailed questions. Often these have to do with the examples, where the example is that somebody actually does something. So they will be major points, not a list of examples, but very specific something, or information right after an important point. You'll have questions about why does the speaker say something. Okay, as it says, it's helpful to think about the overall structure. What are you listening to? So why does the service provider say you do have some kind of government identification, don't you? Well, why do they say that? Because you need an identification, an ID, in order to get a library card, something like that. Okay, definition questions. Usually these are during a lecture, not conversation. The only reason you get this is because the lecturer takes time to actually give a definition. So, an important point here, if you're listening to a lecture and the lecturer defines something, it's going to be a question. You will have a question about it, most certainly. If you recognize that the lecturer is defining something, you better make notes, because there will be a question. Okay, a caucus is a secret party meeting. A secret party meeting is known as a caucus. The subject and object of what you hear could be reversed depending on the verb choices. Obviously, if they use a passive structure, it could be different. Okay, obviously, when you hear the word define, you're listening for, you're hearing a definition, but you also may hear these other verb forms used for, known as, called, referred to. Okay. All right. And the last type of question is inference or suggestion question. These are tough, maybe the hardest kind. Okay, what the speaker is suggesting is what they're talking about. So when people use a question form, why not come back later? Or if I were you, I'd come back later, conditional. You should just come back later. Okay, the inference is not so difficult. These are, you know, indirect statements, but really it's pretty obvious what they mean. And last here, multiple choice questions I mentioned earlier. If you hear anything where they list several things, guns, knives, any kind of fireworks are prohibited at the event. Okay, then they'll give you multiple what items are not allowed at the event, and items B, C, and G are guns, knives, and explosives, something like that. So anytime they give you a list of things, actually be aware that there could be a multiple choice question. Okay, that's it for my blah 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 lecture, and the rest of the week we'll be going ahead and practicing some stuff. So thank you for your attention.
Can I ask a question?
Okay, yeah, okay. Although we're over time and now I'm 2 minutes late for my next class. What's your question?
Did it test accents? Is there a standardized accent?
Yeah, no. So you may have to hear people with some accents. That actually happens a lot. TOEFL, IELTS is primarily British accent, but TOEFL is primarily American, Canadian accent. There will be people with accents, absolutely, but they will be slight, very slight accents. Nothing outrageous. Sure. Okay, I gotta go, guys. Thank you very much.